Thank you. So I want to ask you guys first and foremost a quick question. Who in this room, just a show of hands, is in a leadership role? Great, so good majority of you. Who in this room is a junior or a senior? Anybody? Great, so we've still got a few. One of the things that I've learned over my career and the things that I've done is that, and particularly in physiotherapy, that I'm so passionate about, is how we can build a rapport with our patients. And I think that comes back to actually first recognizing that when a patient steps into your room, or an athlete, is that it's just you as a physio and you as your patient. You've already created a team. So when you're in a team, there's got to be a leader. And when a patient walks into your room or an athlete is coming to you to enhance their performance, they're looking to you for leadership on what is the path that they're going to take. And so whoever's in this room, regardless of actually being in a formal leadership role, of being a head of a department or a senior one or an ESP, or we're in a teaching sort of environment, even as a junior, you're in a leadership role because you're leading that athlete or that patient's care. And that's something just to take away and to start making you think that it's not the fact that we're passive, we're already in an active role from day one that we step into being qualified. And I became aware of that when I started as a junior. So I was very fortunate to work in the Oxford Radcliffe Trust. If there's anybody from there, I don't know if there is at this trust, but I loved working in my NHS role. But when I was working there, I also worked with a rugby team on a Tuesday, Thursday night, Saturday games. And during that time, I suddenly realized that all of those players were looking to me for leadership, to sort of guide them. And it comes back to the values of what is here for this conference, is that it's so important that we recognize that we are there as leaders to make sure, as physios, that we do transform and empower and influence our patients and our athletes. And that became apparent to me when I turned up at this rugby club, and at half-time they were drinking beer. Now, at that time I didn't know a huge amount about performance, but I knew that beer was not going to be the best hydration for a game. So straight away, I had to transform their thinking and their behaviors. And you have to empower our patients and understand that they've got to be leading their own treatment, their own rehabilitation. They've got to be part of the process. Because if you haven't got them engaged, if they don't understand that they're part of a team, if they've got to be doing their part to get themselves better, the chances are they're not going to get better. However much, how brilliant you are clinically, they need to be part of that and understanding the process. So we need to influence their behaviors. We need to influence their understanding through forms of education and those things. But also, I believe that we've got to influence them by building a rapport. The biggest thing for me is that I've always wanted to understand the people that I work with. So when I worked in private practice at Pure Sports Medicine, Sam, I know you're in here somewhere. Basically, when I worked at Pure Sports, we used to see a lot of, and the guys still do, see a lot of people that are doing the London Marathon for the first time. It was their aim, it was their tick box that they just wanted to do a marathon in their lifetime. Now, there's a difference between just wanting to do a marathon and ticking off the box, doesn't matter what time they did it in, versus wanting to do it in a sub 3.5 hour. Performance goals are very, very different. And to me, I wanted to build a rapport with those athletes and those people. And in order to do that, you've got to build trust and you've got to build respect. And so for me, the way I understood it is, and this isn't for everybody, but I started to run marathons to understand, okay, what is it that they're actually going through mentally? So if I understood what it was myself, then I could actually, when I'm treating them, I can say, look, it's going to be tough, it's going to be painful. But if you just want a tick box, you'll be fine. You'll get through it. It'll be over and done with within 4 or 5 hours or whatever you want to do it in. Just get through it, and then you've achieved what your big goal is, and we can sort you out afterwards. So yeah, maybe not the best physio advice, talking to a room of physios, but I am a bit more like that. I'm more into the expeditions. I'm more about the taking part, getting them going, and not necessarily creating lots of barriers for people. I'm always about thinking, you can do it, because having worked in Paralympic sport, people are there with single leg, double leg amputees and much more sort of horrendous accidents, and they show you can achieve it. And so for somebody that's got a little bit of ITB pain, If you're working with a doc that can inject it and they can get through the marathon, then we can rehab it and we can tape it and we can do all sorts to throw the kitchen sink at them and sort it out afterwards. Who am I to stop them if it's not going to be a life-changing injury long term? So controversial as that might be, that's the way I see things. But the reason I've got a few other photos up here of other people is because I've drawn a lot of qualities from different people across the spectrum of how we work. From whether it's sport, whether it's business, whether it's military, in all sorts of environments, I think we can draw a lot of leadership skills, and everybody has got different things that we can cross over and skill sets. Helena Morrissey in the middle here, she was the CEO for Newton Investment Management for over 15 years, the first female to be CEO. And she's made massive changes, and the key for her, for me, is that she massively resonates with these three qualities, because she's empowered people, and women in particular, to drive forwards with business. She set up the 30% Club to get 30% of women on the FTSE 100 before 2020, and they're on that way to do that. She's a very, very powerful woman in business and has done a huge amount of things to get people to change. And then you've got sort of Christie Wellington, who's 5 times Wild Ironwoman champion. And she's used her success to go on to influence other people and to empower others to get into sport, for female sport, but also from the point of view as she's gone on to kind of get Tour de France, which is, even in this day, there's never been females in the Tour de France, and they're now driving to get the female Tour de France up and running, which is crazy to think that that's still an issue. But across the board, having worked in the NHS, having worked with military, Paralympics, Olympics, individual sports, team sports, kind of a portfolio of my career, there's always a common thread in any of those athletes or patients that I've ever worked with. And it always makes me question, what is it when somebody has been faced with the same thing? So say Dave Henson here in the top right. Dave was blown up by an IED at war, lost both of his legs and severe injuries. Now there's other people in his same situation, but what has made somebody that's gone through the same thing go on to become a Paralympic athlete? What happened when he woke up in that hospital that he thought to himself, I'm so glad to be alive, I'm going to make the most of this? Versus the other person that the same thing happened to and they've woken up and they wish they weren't alive. They wish they could give up, and they can't. And so, to me, that's fascinated me in what's that mindset? What is it that kind of, when you're faced with needing to give up, what is it that you draw on to not give up? Or how do you change your mindset? And that's always fascinated me, and you see that through all walks of life. Even in, through the NHS, when you see people in outpatients and they're just there because they're supposed to be there, rather than actually being there in person and being engaged. And to me, if we can transform, empower, and influence those people, they're the ones that are more, to me, more of a successful story, to know that we've been able to make a change with someone. So those are the percentage gains that I think are more important. And it's this thread that's kind of has always made me question, well, look, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I've worked for 10 years in Paralympic sport, surrounded by the likes of, say, Dave Henson and these guys up here. I've been surrounded by people, that have been spinal cord injuries from C6, C7 downwards, no loss of, complete loss of their bodies. It takes them 2 hours just to get up in the morning, but yet they'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning so that they can go to training at 7 a.m. They'll do that and they'll try and maintain their independence as best as possible. And we take stuff like that for granted when we just get up and we walk out the door. And so I've always there's two things that has highlighted to me throughout all of this, is that one is, why do we have to wait for adversity to come and find us in order for us to realize actually what opportunities we have available? Why do we have to wait for that? Why do we not make the most of life and make the most of what we've got now? And the second thing through that as well is sort of, being able to support these guys is one thing, but definitely being able to utilize this and share those stories, but trying to empower, try and influence and transform other people's thinking that don't have this mentality. That's the key for me that I still haven't found the answer to. And it's how we adjust our way of thinking and we adapt to kind of make sure we're sort of coming at it from different angles and we get the best out of our patients and our athletes. But all of this has kind of led me to why I did the row. So in 2016, we finished in January, but we rowed, I put together a team, Cox's crew, and we rowed across the Pacific Ocean. And the aim of that for me was, what is it, this whole driving force? What is it when you're faced with wanting to give up? What do you draw on? And there were plenty of things, even before I got to the start line. I thought it was only to take me a year to put a team together. I was so naive. I thought it was only going to take me a year to get 250 grand. Thought sponsorship, that'll happen, that's fine, it's easy. And I just need to get a boat built, fine, get some equipment, and I need to train. And so for me, the first year, I was very focused on what our training schedule was going to be and getting the team together. Forgetting that actually I had to set up a business. I had to sort of work out how I was going to get a sponsorship program together. I had to get £250,000, which is not easy, so it seems. So what was supposed to be a year ended up being postponed to another year. I then lost a couple of team members, so there was another team recruitment. We still didn't quite have the funds, so it got postponed again. And in essence, it took 4 years until we stood on that start line. It took me 3 recruitment drives in order for me to find the right team, because there was no way I was going to step onto a 29-foot ocean rowing boat, which is basically less than the length of this stage, and live on that boat for what was going to be 6 months if I didn't trust and respect, and vice versa. Those guys had the same respect for me in going across the ocean. So there were lots of things that kind of challenged me, and I had to overcome barriers to get to the start line. But we did make it, thankfully, and I had a great team of girls with me. But even then, when we got to the ocean, I thought, oh, thank God, I'm here. We've just got 6 months. All I've got to do is row, eat, sleep, repeat, and I'm done. And this is all over with. I can never look at another rowing boat again. Except, of course, the ocean did throw us up a few little hurdles. And for instance, you know, the first 10 days, I was violently seasick. I was completely hallucinating. I was not in a great place. But all I could muster up was the energy to get on the oars, row, and then rest. And in actual fact, that was a crucial time that worked to my favor as a leader to actually make me realize and allow the rest of the team to step up and support me. And that's something I'll talk about a bit later on. But that was a crucial time for me to recognize that. I very much had a leadership sort of way of seeing things through my lens and kind of thinking that I had to lead by example and that I had to be able to do everything better than everybody else so that I could support them, never thinking that actually I needed to support the other way around. And so that was a crucial part of the journey, which actually worked in our favor. But during that time, we unfortunately had some issues. We went through 2 tropical storms. We had flooding on the boat, which then led to a battery fire. So the first 10 days did not start too well. And it meant that we had to make a decision. We had no electronics, so we had to make a decision to turn back into Santa Barbara, which meant we were further away from where we were originally in San Francisco, and we had to restart. So our first leg had an additional 14 days, and then the actual leg then from Santa Barbara to Hawaii took us over 65. In Hawaii, we restocked the boat. We had a change of team members, which was planned. So Izzy stepped out, and then we had Lizanne stepped in, and the 3 of us continued forwards as well. So 3 of us did all of it, and then 3 rotated seats. Hawaii to Samoa was a heck of a lot longer, 97 days. 97 days at sea, 60 days that we did not see a plane in the sky or another boat, another human being living in existence. We saw fish and we saw birds and whales and turtles, and all of them we gave names to, and we had our own little BBC voiceover to ourselves. It's surprising how you keep yourself amused in the middle of the ocean. Clearly I'm slightly bizarre, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. But yeah, and then Samoa we had a change, and then the last leg, again, we got into a couple of tropical storms, had to divert, and it took 77 days. But we made it. The key thing was, yes, I planned 6 months. It took us 9 months in the end. It took us 257 days at sea. But for me, that would not have been a success if it wasn't for these girls. If it wasn't for us as a team coming together. We stepped on as teammates, but I can truly say that we stepped off as true friends. And that is the thing that I hold dearly today. So many ocean rows, you hear of people going in their different ways. They've fallen out, they didn't get on. But we did get on, and for a number of good reasons, which I'll talk about in a sec. But you've been talked at a lot, so I'll just give you a little clip of our trailer of our documentary, which is on Netflix and stuff now. And it should give you a bit of an insight into life at sea.
There's an incredible insight to be gained, to know that you can fight and overcome anything that is thrown your way.
The main reason is to test myself, to see what I'm capable of.
The story of why we're here and why we're doing it for breast cancer. You think life's too short and you really do have to live it, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
154 days to go.
We haven't seen the sunshine in about a week.
You only have one life, so you might as well make the most of it.
The girls aren't going to break any records. They're actually going to establish records because this has never been done before.
The quote goes that you can never cross an ocean unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. And that's where your real achievements lie. Fire and we lost the MPPT box.
I believe that everyone has their own Pacific to cross.
So yeah, now thank you. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of an insight into life at sea with the little sharkies and things. But one assumption that people have always made is that, you know, we were friends and we just chatted in a bar and we decided to row an ocean. That wasn't quite the case, and actually, to pull the team together, I actually wanted a complete blank slate. I didn't want to know people because I wanted us to be able to be completely open and honest with each other, because I feel transparency and honesty and being able to share and communicate in a very straight way, it was really, really crucial to the success of this row. And so in order to find the team, as I said, I went through 3 recruitments. I struggled to get the right dynamics because it wasn't just about individuals. It was about how individuals interacted, how people would get on with me, and vice versa, I would get on with them. And in this final stage, the way I ended up doing it and finding these girls was I worked with a psychologist, Keith Goddard, who to this day continues to help me out a huge amount, both personally and when I sort of do team stuff. But we did psychometrics, which was really, really interesting. I value that type of stuff immensely when you're working within a team, because it strips away, and it was NEO, so it was a very in-depth, it wasn't just the insights and things like that that are quite, or Myers-Briggs that we might do as big corporate teams, but NEO went into a much, much deeper detail. And the key thing to that was it actually highlighted where obviously my strengths and weaknesses were. And the interesting thing is the people that I was attracted to, that I was sort of say, oh yeah, that person would be great. You know, that person's done an Ironman, that person's run a marathon, so they know how to train, they know how to push their bodies. I want them in the boat. In actual fact, I kind of was looking for people through my lens, through the same kind of mindset, the same sort of personality. And that meant we had massive gaps of weaknesses because we were all pretty much the same. And so using the psychologist to help me balance the team was crucial. So people had strengths where my weaknesses were. But in actual fact, when we did, I worked with a team called Fieri ex-military, and I asked them to take us to the Brecons. I wanted to do 48 hours of sleep deprivation, put us in cold, wet conditions, make us physically tired and active, and test us, you know, mentally as a team, how we work together. So what they did is they set up we did about, I think, 50 Ks across the Brecons, no sleep. We had to carry our own food, we had to do our navigation, and then there were these checkpoints, and at each checkpoint I asked for the team to have a different team leader, so everybody got a chance to be in a leadership role and how they interacted, and I wanted to see how the team supported that leader as well as kind of how they all we worked together. And when I went into that, I would have told you who I was going to pick as the team. And when I came out of it, it was a completely different network. Because the interesting thing is when you're put under pressure, sometimes it's the people you least expect are the ones that are going to come through and shine. It was the two people, Nat and Megs wasn't actually on this trip, but very similar personality to Megs, another girl, who physically weren't necessarily the best. They hadn't run any marathons, they hadn't done anything like that before. However, although they were at the back and they were struggling, they were the ones that kept morale up. They still kept a sense of humour and they never complained. And I realised that's exactly what I want in my boat. I need somebody that's going to give me a sense of humour when I'm having a failure of it. Because the thing is, I get very serious. I'm very planned and organised and I get very focused into what I need to do. So I need somebody that's like that, that's going to kind of keep a bit of sense of morale up. I need somebody like Izzy, who actually I thought I was going to have a real barrier with, but she's a lawyer. She was very ordered and structured and planned and actually liked everything written down and loves Excel spreadsheets. So I was like, you know what, winner, like she can be in the team, because actually she gave us routines in that first leg, which was what we needed. So the kind of key from that was, you know, don't underestimate or sort of shy away from somebody that might be introverted or quiet or not quite what you judge them on the first impressions. Because actually when you test people deep down underlying, they might actually come through to be a real key member of your team, but you just haven't allowed them the space and the time to have a voice. And the other thing I learned from the girls, and I sort of touched on this before, is allowing, you know, yourself to see within your team, it's trust. Trust is crucial. And when you see that in, say, military environments, where it's life or death situation, for me with the row, it was, would I trust the team? Who would I trust to pull me back into the boat if I fell overboard? To look after me if I was physically sick or ill or those sorts of things. It comes back to when I did this with a backup trust, a spinal cord organisation that teaches people to scuba dive. One of the things I went on with them was taking spinal cord injured people to Egypt and teaching them to dive. And when we're down there, it's all about, it doesn't matter what your backgrounds are, what your skill sets are, it's about how you can share your oxygen with each other. I had to trust my teammate just as much that they were going to carry oxygen for me as much as I would for them if mine failed. And that's a team. Now, you know, that's taking it to the extreme with your patients, but what I'm trying to say is you've got to build that respect and that trust between yourselves in order to get the best outcome. And that's whether you've got a big team or you've got a smaller team. Sometimes you as a leader, the strongest thing you can do is allow yourself to step down and sort of allow your team to grow. And when those first 10 days for me, when I took myself out of that leadership role through illness, but I actually saw how strong the team were. And that was crucial to the success, I think, of the journey, rather than me dictating from the front. The other thing for me was that we really stuck true to our values. Our values were spirit, but that meant strength, perseverance, inspiration, resilience, and trust, and integral to our team. So we lived and breathed integrity and, you know, all of those values that we sort of upheld. And we would respond to that. We had that inside the cabin. We were looking at it every day when we rowed. And we had a team meeting once a week that we went round our team and would say, you know what, this week, mentally you've really shown true strength, and physically you've shown perseverance, you've got back on the oars and resilience in doing so. However, you haven't done so well with trusting the team, and to me that shows, you know, not such good integrity to be able to share and communicate how you work with us. So we lived and breathed it. And the question with that is coming back to transform, empower, influence. Those are the values of this conference. So live and breathe it over these 2 days and live and breathe it when you go back to work. Now going on from that, you know, this was an environment that I had that I worked within a team that was a group of us. But I've just got back from having supported Mark Beaumont, who cycled around the world in less than 80 days. I was his support literally throughout the whole thing, looking after him prior and getting him ready to the expedition. We were the team. It was me and that athlete. And yes, I had other people around me, but fundamentally, I literally created a bubble between the two of us. I would live and breathe and think everything before him, so all he had to do was cycle. I didn't want him to think about anything else. I didn't want any other issues coming into play. I would feed him, I would give him the water, I just wanted him to cycle. And that was a very clear goal. It was very clear in where we were going to. And then what I had is a second team of experts behind me that enabled me to be able to do my job. And again, I trust that I had the best doctors in the world at the end of the phone, the best dentist in the world in the end, because I had to fix his tooth. Again, not what you get taught as a physio, so slightly out of scope of practice. But I trusted the fact that I had a very good dentist at the end of the phone teaching me what I had to do. And you have to get through these things. But you know, this environment was very, very different. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're stuck in a cabin, whether you're out in the open, whether you're in your clinic room, the way that you interact with your athlete, your patient, is still the values and the sort of the embodiment of what you're doing is still exactly the same, and it doesn't matter where you are. So the key things to take away for me is that controlling the controllables was a key quote that we had throughout the whole row. And it was the same with the cycle. And, you know, fundamentally today, control the controllables. I should have been here at 9 a.m. I wasn't. And at the end of the day, that was something completely out of, you know, that never, ever happens to me. But, you know, at the end of the day, it did, and it sucks. But, you know, there's no point me standing here and flustering about it. It's not going to get me any better. So it is what it is, and these guys worked seamlessly to make it look like that didn't happen. And now I've just told you that it did. But you control the controllables, and that's all you can do. And what I mean by that is sometimes things happen that you can't control. So focus on the things that you can and that you can impact on, whether that's with your patient, whether that's with your team. There's sometimes things that we have to do, you know, that there's influences, say, from rules and regulations that you can't change, and you've just got to go with it. So there's no point trying to fight against it. And above, first and foremost, what we've always said in our rowing is that everybody has their own Pacific to cross. And what I mean by that is when you're faced with your patients that might be that bit more difficult, that you've got to adapt how you approach them, how you try and influence their behaviors, how you empower them, think that everybody's going through something different. So what your Pacific might not be the same for them. The smallest of hurdles might be the biggest of oceans for them. So try and put yourself in their seat sometimes and try and see it from different angles to get the best out of them. And above all, I hope you enjoy the conference, and remember to empower, to influence, to transform. Use those values as you go through this weekend, and use them on Monday morning when you go back to work, and see if you can use those values and live and breathe them with your patients. Thank you very much.